Good afternoon. I really wanted to talk with you about something that has come to my attention from my recruiters. And I know it's something that everybody looks at in resumes these days, and that is longevity at the job. And so I know for those of us that have been recruiting and looking at people for a long time, one of the top things I used to say 10, 15 years ago was make sure they haven't job jumped. And so you would look at a resume and you would look at all the jobs that they've had and you would make sure that they stayed at one for 5 years or 7 years or 9 years to make sure they would be a good employee for you, for the next 10 years. Well, although times have changed, a lot of us haven't changed our mindset on that. And I wanted to give you some insight that we have as recruiters and me as an HR professional about why that we might not be able to look at that as carefully. Number one, a lot of companies are being sold right now, small businesses, as well as to private equity. And so what that means is that oftentimes when companies are sold to private equity, with no fault of their own, the controller, the bookkeeper, the HR person loses their job because all of a sudden, all of those services that were performed at the small company level are now performed at the private equity level. And so, even though they were fantastic or phenomenal, they may not be able to keep their jobs because the larger company that absorbed them actually had those same services. So, again, no fault of their own. Number two, a lot of times we looked at that when we used to work for big companies. And if you look at somebody's resume who worked for a big company, they might have had 5 or 6 positions within that big company because you could move from job to job to job over a period of 10, 20 years and still stay with the same company. So, with that thinking, you would think, oh, they stay in the same job for a long time because they were with the same company. Maybe they were with Delta Airlines, but they had lots of different positions. Well, these days, when we have people that are in small businesses, they really can't move job to job because it's a small business. So they do have to move between companies to get different experiences. So that may not be a person who is a flighty person or somebody who is not going to be committed. It may just be a person that worked for small enough businesses that in order for them to change skill sets, they actually had to leave that business and go to another business. Whereas if they would have worked for a big company, you would have considered them that they had the same job, even though they had 5 jobs within that same company. Also, the recent government spending changes that we have incurred in the last 2 years have really had a trickle down effect. So there has been a lot of job loss, especially at the level of employee that we hire. And so we'll see a lot of times in HR and finance and admin, we'll see a lot of those jobs went away, specifically because government funding went away. Not just government contractors, but then all the fallout underneath them. And then lastly, we can't forget that we're only 5 years out, almost 6 years out of the pandemic. And so we had a lot of companies that went under or lost employees because of the pandemic. So because of all those factors, because of the private equity factors, because of, the factors that they don't work for a big company, because those factors that they, are really suffering from the government shutdown of some accounts, as well as the inability for us to totally recover from the pandemic. All those reasons, somebody could be a great employee, especially in the HR or finance space, and not have kept their job for the last 6 or 7 years. And so when you look at that resume that we may give you or you may get from somewhere else, and it may have a lot of different job losses in there or change companies, it does not now signify, because of all the things I talked about, that they're a bad employee or they don't want to stay somewhere or somebody didn't like them. It just means that they will likely, especially if they were part of small businesses, got caught up in one of the things that we talked about. So we would like you should consider some of the great gems out there that may not have traditionally long job performance history in their resume, but they're still incredible performers. So I wouldn't knock those people out because they may be your best candidate.